All right, I'm headed off Jesus TV here, and we're doing Jesus is in this mess. Jesus in this mess. That's what it is. Jesus in this mess. And Emily and Jonathan are going to take over. Jesus told me I need to go to state conference, a church meeting. Okay, talk to you later.
All right. So last week, Jonathan said some of the video didn't capture my art that we were talking about. So here's the art we were talking about. I'll post it online so you can see like some different photos and images of it. But I think we talked a lot about layers and stuff. And yeah.
And hold it up to the other camera really fast. There you go. Just in case it doesn't catch the camera that's pointing down.
Yeah. It looks like it is though. I don't know, but that's a good idea. Okay.
It didn't look, it looked like it was last week and it didn't catch it. So I just want to make sure.
Okay.
All right.
Should we pick up where we left off last week?
Yeah. Do you remember where it was?
I wrote down on the back of this artwork, my one on the right here. We talked a lot about the beauty and destruction and about letting things happen naturally, about man's chaos is God's order. We talked about the idea of cleansing fire a little bit. I talked a little bit about the forest in Germany, and I was going to research that, and I totally forgot. And I think you said something like, you said, sometimes I think this needs a forest fire because life's too perfect. And that's kind of what so this was all mostly, that was the last bit, I think. So it sounds like it was a lot about destruction and cleansing fire. And I don't know, that whole idea of, I guess my thought would just be, you know, I asked the question, like, why do you think sometimes, like, why is fire cleansing? I guess would be a good question. Or why would you think that sometimes this needs a fire? I guess is kind of my thought, like, or just in general, why are fires, like, you know, fires are really good, supposedly, like, even though fires, they're dangerous for people, new forest growth happens a lot after a fire and it gives nutrients and stuff to the ground, right? Or isn't it good for forests sometimes to like have a fire and like it's part of the process? I don't know. I don't know that much about it, honestly.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's all.
Well, that's a good question. Can't say I completely know. I think it's one of those things that could go in the realm of it's a mystery, and yet it's a mystery that we can approach. You know, we can begin to understand it by observing a little bit, I think. I think that, what was I going to say? I don't know, but one thing that I can observe is that seems to be the way of nature. It is an ecology. It's there gets to be too many rats, and then there gets to be whatever eats the rats. They flourish and they eat too many rats, and then it's just kind of how it works. It's like there's too many gazelles, and then there's too many lions, and then there's too many gazelles, and it just kind of goes back and forth. But that's kind of how God works in a sense. It's like he created the world to work that way, that it's this kind of cycle of creation and destruction. But as humans, it seems like we cling so much to our own lives. We believe that we are so much because we have this self-consciousness. We have a consciousness of, at least more of a consciousness than I think the animals do, of ourselves as I don't think that animals and nature covets its own life quite so much as humans do. And I don't think that nature understands necessarily. I mean, if there's a forest fire, it's like the trees, I'm sure, don't like it. I'm sure that, the animals go running away in fear. But so but it does seem to be a part of it all. And it's something that I can't completely understand, but it does make me think about that thing we talked about last time about how so many of the oh goodness, I'll grab it here in a second. We were talking about, well, I lost it. We were talking about something. We were talking about this thing of forest fires. We were talking about,
We're saying like
oh,
this life needs a good fire or a good cleansing fire.
right, right. Well, and that goes back to the idea of the evil and the light, the darkness and the light, right? It's like for some reason, it's like we need darkness, and that seems really like a strange phenomenon. Not to say that we should go seeking after it, just like, like a tree wouldn't go seeking after a forest fire, but that God in the heavens, which kind of ordains all of these things, it's like he can see when what's needed is destruction. It's like, and I wonder if part of it is that it's like it gets to be too good. It's like you so quickly forget where all the good things came from. You so quickly begin to believe that you're the only one that has it figured out, that you're, and it's like, and so it's like, even when Christ came, he, it all ended. He died. It's like he became sin, went down to this which I don't know what that means quite, but went to this terrible place, and then he was wiped out, so that he could rise again. So, yeah.
So maybe it's like this whole concept of well, like you said, like the light stands out from the dark. And I remember last week, this is what we were talking about with my heart, is how, so it's this one, and then I'll show it up here. We were talking about how like something I do is I always try to do a balance of light and dark in my artwork. And that's what we were talking about, is how if you don't have that contrast in art, it doesn't stand out. And maybe that, to me, that kind of relates a lot to what you're just saying. Like if you don't have that dark, you don't realize how much you need the light, I guess. It's I think maybe that's why there's that balance, because you just don't, like you said, you so easily forget. Like when life's good, it's so easy to forget God. But when like I'm really needing something, then I talk to him all the time. There's kind of a, like you said, it's just kind of, it's also just a natural way of life. And I like that. Like, I like the whole idea that we talked about that a little bit too, how the whole idea how there's like seasons and there's like natural ways that things just happen and flow. But yeah, talking a lot about that. I just got to think about that for a minute in the silence.
Okay. I I did have a thought, try to remember what it was. It was about back and forth seasons, the contrast. Right. And I think the time that we're going towards is a time where there's so much light in the earth. And I don't quite mean the same type of light. I mean like God is going to and is in the process of revealing knowledge, which will help us to understand the process itself. And the more we understand it, the more that we will accept the darkness. It's like the person who has, going back to the alcoholic who's been addicted to alcohol for so long, and they come to this strange place, as they come into recovery, where they're so grateful for the how do I put it? They realize that their period of darkness was the thing which brought them to the light. So it's like you start to get into this place where you don't know what's good anymore. It's like I have this deep and abiding relationship with God now, but that came because of this dark period, and I have a knowing that I would never have this deep relationship if I hadn't gone through that darkness. And so yeah, and there's a scripture that I think is good in the New Testament where it was where was it Mary Magdalene who came and washed Jesus's feet, I think, and anointed his feet with oil, and he said, "This is in preparation for my burial." But there was this place, I think it was that, and that experience where he was kind of rebuked by the people he was with. They were like, this woman's a sinner or something, and he said, she who is forgiven of much loves much. And that's a paradox. It's like, so you're telling me that if Judas was to return and repent, that he would love Jesus more than anyone. Wow. What a paradox. And what happens when your desire is to love much? What happens when you look out and you realize maybe we're in heaven, right? Before we came here, and you look and you're like, well, these people really love Jesus. How did that come? And God's like, oh, maybe you don't want to know.
Yeah, he's like, are you sure you really want that? Because that comes with a whole lot.
Well, I remember years ago, I won't go into all the details of this, but I remember I was fascinated by, there's a particular person that I've always been fascinated by. It's Gandhi. Ever since I saw the movie when I was a kid, it's been a strange fascination. Like I was drawn into his life. And I remember there was this one little clip that I found on YouTube, and it was an actual clip where the BBC came and interviewed him. Go ahead.
That's ready.
What's that? Did you say something?
That wasn't me.
Oh, that was weird. Oh, you know what? I bet you it's somebody in Greg's garage because he left running. Oh, in his house. Yeah, it's all right. They're getting ready to go to church.
That wasn't me. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was you. All right. So, anyways, so they, so I used to watch this clip, and it was this clip of they're interviewing Gandhi, and it's 5 minutes long or something, and I was just, and I would watch it over and over again. I was just fascinated by he had this deep, deep peace. And I didn't really think of it as peace. It was just something about him. It was like I was studying it. And then I was given this blessing at one time. And in the blessing, I was told, you've seen Gandhi and others in whom you've seen this deep peace, and you have longed for this deep peace, but you don't understand how it comes. And you won't understand until, and I won't say what it was that the until was, but basically it was until this terrible thing has happened to you. And the thing that was told to me was like my worst nightmare. It was the thing that I couldn't imagine. And it was like, whoa. Afterwards, I was like, I looked at the person who gave me the blessing. I was like, that was a blessing?
Are you sure that was a blessing? I feel like a blessing.
Yeah. But you know what happened? the very thing, the very thing. And it's like, and I'll tell you what happens when the worst thing that you can imagine happens to you in your life. The thing that you dread more than anything is that after that point, there's not much that can rile or ruffle you. It's like, it's like, oh, so you're going to take me out and, drag me behind a horse and kill me. It's like, it just seems so small because you've already experienced the worst. So I got it finally after it happened. It was like, oh, yeah, that's how you come to have that kind of peace, is that you face, it's like God brings into your life the worst thing that you can imagine, the forest fire, right? And after the forest fire, it's like, well, what can there be that'd be worse than this, worse than that?
Yeah. I agree in many ways. Like, the whole reason I started seeking Jesus so much was because the possible worst thing that I thought could happen in my life happened. Right? Greg, will you put that on mute? Yours? Thanks. Okay. Yeah. So, that was the whole reason I started seeking Jesus, is because in my marriage, so I've always been a very religious person, like obsessively religious, I would say, which, it's not that far concerning the things of Jesus I do. I am very obsessive. So I was like obsessively religious. Like I would, like growing up, I read all of my major scriptures by the time I was like, I don't know, like 16 or something. I was so into all of that. And part of that was because of just coming from like a single parent home and just feeling abandoned by my father. And that was a big part of it. So I was looking for that peace. I was looking for that comfort. And anyways, so I always knew that religion was really important to me. And so when it came to meeting someone and getting married, I found someone that I felt was really good and really kind and supportive, and felt the same religiously. And like, that was all like really important to me. And then, see, how many years have we been married? 7 years, right? Isn't it always the 7-year thing? Anyways, 7 years later, my husband's like, yeah, I don't believe any of this stuff anymore. And I don't want to go to church and, in temples and all of this. And it destroyed me. Like it was really hard, but I was already kind of a little bit broken. I already knew something was wrong before that, like I mentioned before in the past. And because I had support from other people who had been through hard things, I was able to feel more hopeful, and I was able to be like, it's okay, as long as we're honest, we can get through this. If we can be honest about our feelings, and not just living a lie to each other, then I think, and then, so we worked on that. And it's actually been, we do have our times and we don't agree on everything, but it's still been really good. I've been very supportive. And so I think there's still that, but that was like the hardest thing for me to be like, I literally had that question. I've mentioned this before, where I was like, and it sounds really bad. And it's, I don't know if it's shallow or not, but I was like, well, if it's not forever, then what's the point of being married? Like that sounds really stupid, I think, in some ways, but that's what was going through my head, because there's a lot of reasons to be married more than that. But at the time, in my thinking, it was, and at first I thought maybe it was just like a phase, and it's not a phase. And I've come to accept that over the last several years, and I've come to be okay with that. Over the past 4 years, that it's not a phase. But again, it was a lot of things about that were like the worst thing possible. And it was, I don't know, but again, that's what made me seek Jesus. That's what made me look for answers. And it's like something bad happens and you try to look for reasons, right? Or you try to look for hope, there's only two things you can do. I think when something bad happens, you can either get angry at the world, which happens too. There's always moments of that, and you can sit in that anger, or you can try to find like a hope out of it. and maybe it's like the glass half empty, half full kind of thing. And so most of the time I choose to try to find some hope in that mess. But yeah, and that's not all the details of everything, but that's just the gist of it. Is just, it's, when you feel so lost and you feel like everything's terrible, that's where you find God. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know, you can keep going. I'm just talking.
That was really good. I appreciate you sharing that. And this is kind of a shifting of gears, and I don't know if we'll go down this road or not, but I'm struck by the fact that, people don't understand how forever comes. There's a song, I can't remember, let's see if I can remember it, how it goes, or at least the lyrics. What's forever for? It's kind of a country western sort of song. I've been lately wondering about, it seems like nobody stays together anymore. Nobody stays together anymore. And something about, if we want forever, what's forever for? It's this idea, this guy's struggling because, a lot of people in his lives are getting divorced. And it makes him so sad to see these people throw away something that was at one time so good. And it's interesting because it's one of those things, like I know that it's like in God's economy, there is a time for everything, right? So like there's a time to kill and a time to let live, like the proverb. It's that's how it is, and there's a time for divorce. I totally get that. But what people don't realize, I think, is that it's like people don't realize is that, like, I don't know, something about what you said. It's like, if you had said that the circumstances were different, and there could be different circumstances, but obviously, like, at this point, it's like you've realized that there is something really good about your marriage, even if it doesn't last forever. And it's like that's the way relationships are. And I think that's the way that family is that it's like you have to hold on day by day. And it's like, I really, I've actually had the thought, it's like, having been raised in the framework that you and I were raised in, we talk and talk and talk about forever. Forever, forever, forever. Families are forever. It's become like a catchphrase, and we say it over and over and over again, and it's one of those catchphrases that started to annoy me a few years ago. And it's not that it's not a beautiful idea. It's that it's like I don't know how to put it, but it's like it's sometimes when you're so focused on forever, it's like one of the things that I've thought about is, it's like, well, how does forever begin? It begins until death do us part. And it's like, and what I've discovered in many instances, when people are so focused on forever, they forget that it's like, it's like it would have been helpful for them to also have the phrase till death do us part, and it's like, it's I don't know, it's a delicate subject because I'm standing on one side of it, right? I'm not standing on the side of somebody who it's the will of God that something end, because it's not of God, right? The thing that they are doing is not of God, and it would be a sin to stay. I know that exists, and I'm not denying that. But I found that in so many instances, it's like somebody will be married to a good woman or a good man, and that good woman, that good man experiences a forest fire. You know, they fall into some addiction. They go through a difficult time with this or that. They have a midlife crisis, whatever. But it's not. I don't know. I think what I'm trying to do in my mind, the reason I'm beating around the bush with this, is I'm trying to divide a line, the truth is that I can't. And it's like it seems like a good attitude is that it's like maybe I'm just beating around the bush. I think really I'm for family. It's like I'm for hanging on to the person, you know, who you think you can't hang on to. It's like it's part of my makeup, I guess. It's like I and every time I see it, I just am in awe, for one thing, and also just I just, it fills my heart with joy because I know what comes on the other side of the forest fire, right? It's like I know what comes on the other side of the forest fire. And I think God knows. And that's so, and I'll say this last thing. So I kind of wonder if that's why we can rest upon God. Like the scriptures are always talking about like how God is looking at us like a bride, you know, and there's a scripture in Isaiah, I think it is, where it says, "Where's the bill of thy mother's divorcement?" You know, it's like, I've never divorced her. I've never divorced you. You know, it's this strange place of family. Like you don't, like, you know, there's the scripture, can a woman like turn against her own child? And he says, even though sometimes women do turn against their own children, I will never forsake you. And it's this place of, it's like you may hate me, you may despise me, you may not want me in your life. I may have to withdraw and not even see you for decades. But that doesn't mean that this is over. It's like, and I love it when people take that attitude towards a loved one in their lives, especially towards a family member. It's like, it may be over for you, or you may be so toxic, I can't even live in the same house with you. But like when I decided that you were going to be mine, I was serious about it. And I will pray you back. You know, it's like the mother who prays for decades for the child, and the child comes back. And I've heard stories about how like it was revealed to the child that it was because of the prayers of the mother. You know, it's like, wow, yeah. Anyways, that's another theme. I kind of went off the track a little bit, but I think it's important.
Yeah, one of the thoughts that came to me as you were talking is like the whole idea of forever. I was thinking something like one day at a time until,
Yes.
until, yeah, like you take it one step at a time and you keep, I don't know, or kind of like the whole idea of a seed that, you know, you plant and it grows, and there's the different seasons. And, you know, sometimes like I think of my raspberry bushes. Okay. I love raspberries, and we've been trying to grow raspberry bushes for years, and it's really hard. Like, I don't know if it's our ground or like the position of the sun. We have a lot of shade. I don't know. And we keep trying to grow them many different places. And we have a couple that have actually held on for a few years. And the weird thing is, I don't remember what type they are, but they're of the type where like they die every year, and then every year it grows a new kind of sprig or a new section. And it's weird because you think it's dead. Like you look at it and you're like, this plant is dead. There's nothing left here. I'm not going to get any raspberries. And then the next year, or like even a couple months later, all of a sudden there's like a bush, there's like a ton of raspberries. And then, I mean, I'm certain, like before, I'm certain it was dead. Like it looked dead. It was brown. There was no green. It was 100% dead. And I don't like dead plants. Like right now I'm going crazy with the winter, because I got dead leaves all over my yard, and there's just dead grossness everywhere, and everything's dirty. Like when the snow melts. I don't know, you're in Arizona, maybe not. Do you have snow in the part of Arizona you're in? Probably not. No, probably not. But you've been places like that before, where it's like the snow melts and everything gets really ugly, like because it melts, and then you're like, all that's left is this ugliness. And it's so February, it's got to be one of the ugliest. Like in like Utah, or a lot of places where I've been. Like January is really cold and snowy. February is just like ugly, right? And then all of a sudden things are like grass. Like you don't water it for like 6 months, like for me in Utah, and then all of a sudden it grows back, and you have to like, so this whole, I guess it's this whole idea of it just takes time, and there's waiting, and there's this growth. And I guess, like you said, there's a time and a season for everything, but also there's this time where it's like you don't give up. Again, all circumstances and all people have different circumstances. And, I'm not talking about like if you're in an abusive relationship or those types of things, but
Well, and can I interject there? Just sometimes even in those abusive relationships, sometimes the right thing to do is to get out. But that doesn't mean that it's over if you decide that you don't want it to be over. It's like sometimes if you, this is where revelation comes in, I think. It's like, okay, what does God say? Does God say that this is death, or does he say that this is just dormancy? Like you say, this is just February, right? It's like, and if the person has the desire to do good, the desire to repent, the desire to do better, well, then there's a chance. And that's something you can exercise faith in if you feel so inspired to do so. Another thing that's fascinating that you made me think of while you were saying that was that a paradoxical principle connected to this is letting go. So part of the way that we are able to have an eternal relationship with anybody, with God, with anyone, and with a spouse, with a child, the way that transcends death is that you have to be willing to let go to the seasons. So, there comes a death, an apparent death, like you're talking about your raspberry bushes. It's like you have to let go and accept the fact that this raspberry bush may have died. It looks like it's died, but at the same time, and I find that in relationships too, it's like we have to let go to God in a sense. It's like, so say you have a child or somebody close to you who leaves and they don't want to have anything to do with you. You talked about you had a situation with your father where you felt abandoned when you were young, and it's like you let go it's like to the fact that this is the end. It's like, and I'm going to allow this person, like you're talking about your husband, he's kind of come into this agnostic place, and it's like you let go to this place of, it's like, well, I had this type of relationship. I no longer have that type of relationship. Like God giveth, God taketh away. And it looks like to me that I'm not going to have this again. So it's a paradoxical principle that when you let that person go, let them become what they're becoming, let them go through what they're going through, that actually is part of what opens the way for it to be different down the road. It's like that person needs that experience. Those raspberry bushes need to go into that dormancy. They need to look dead before they're going to bring forth new life. I don't know why,
I think
but,
part of it, yeah, I was going to say, I'm sorry, I can wait if I don't forget it.
I'm done.
Okay. I think part of it has to do with the whole idea of like, kind of like unconditional love, of this whole idea that I think about an experience I had growing up when I was a young teenager. I had this neighbor who was, she was a little bit younger than me. She was always at our house. And she was really annoying. I mean, really annoying. And she would like steal stuff and lie and things that I worked really hard for. And I was like 13. I remember talking to my mom. And this is actually what started me in journal writing, actually, this whole thing. So this neighbor, this really hard thing. And my mom was like, well, they don't have like the best home life. And, you know, maybe they're all annoying and things because they want to see if you're going to reject them just like everyone at home has. Like maybe they're just trying to see if you really love and you really care about them. And anyways, through that whole situation, we actually ended up becoming really good friends for a lot of years. And we haven't talked much lately. They moved and I moved and like Mel moved, but I still really love this person. And but it just, what it makes me think of is just, so people have to know how much you care. And like, if you can love, like when I was going through my stuff and when I learned some, like my husband and I, when I learned some of the stuff that he believed and I believed differently, but when I learned what he thought, and you have to look, I was like, actually, it's pretty amazing that he could still love me, thinking that my beliefs are totally not true, and just be like, well, I love you. And so I'm like, you look at it from the flip side, you know, like people are like, oh, you can still be with someone that doesn't have the same religious. And it's like, well, on their point of view, I'm the crazy one. Like there's a different way. And, you know, it goes both ways. And I think there's something to be said. And again, I don't have a perfect relationship or a perfect marriage or any of those things, or I have hard times with my kids and with my family. But I think there's that whole thing to be said of just loving somebody through something. And sometimes those things take a really, really long time, like stuck for years. Sometimes it feels like you're stuck for years and years in the same places. But it's that whole idea of you just keep loving and just spring does come. And then, like you said, like the whole raspberry bush, it dies and it comes back. You know, I don't know. That was just kind of my thought.
Yeah, interesting. Do you want to tell us about what you're painting?
Oh yeah, it's just a mess. So I'll hold it here and then I'll hold it up here. So I'm just kind of doing patterns. Sometimes I like to layer abstract patterns. And I felt like blue, but then we were talking about fires and cleansing fire. So then I was like, I guess we'll use orange, but now we're talking about plants. I go to green, I'm like, am I getting too many colors? So I don't know. I really don't know what I'm doing. It's just a mess. I'm just playing with textures and with paint. And I don't know, this one will probably take me a couple weeks at least. So yeah, there's not, I kind of did a face on here, but you can't see it anymore and it doesn't look like a face anymore. So I won't point it out. But it's just playing. That's really all I'm doing. Cool. I was trying to open one of my, there are different types of paint mediums you can use with oil paint. And right now this is just turpentine, which is kind of like the water of oil paint is what I call it. Mineral spirits kind of are, right? They thin it out, they remove it. But I wanted to use a different stuff that was more gel-like, but I can't get either of my containers open. Like I couldn't open, I was trying to open them for a while and I was like, I can't do it. So I'm just doing another idea. Like that didn't work how I planned. So yeah, something I'm doing right now, this is something I would usually do with like brushes, but I'm trying not to. But this is definitely, if I was doing with brushes, it would be very quick and very easy. I would be able to do it in like 2 minutes probably. And so I don't know, I'm like, do I really need to keep up with my left hand? I don't know. Do I?
Yeah, you just gotta follow your artistic inclination.
Because sometimes I'm like, why make it harder? It's already hard enough, right? Why? And then the other times it's like, so sometimes when I do art this way, I think about, there's so little in life that I have control over, and there's so few things, and that I don't always have control over exactly what my paint does. So I should say this, when I use a brush, I feel like I have a lot of control over what happens. And when I do all these textures and I use something else, it's like my area of control lessens. and I don't have as much control. So I don't know. And I'm trying to, I am trying to embrace the uncontrollable. Actually, what I probably should do with this would be really cool. It's got all like this oils and stuff on it. It would actually be really interesting to light this on fire and see what happened. Like, how would it burn? What would it do? And we talked about that a little bit last week. It's actually a really good day for that. Maybe I will. I don't know. There might be something about air quality though, but I don't know.
I wouldn't do it in the. I'd do it outside if I were you.
Yeah, obviously I'm gonna do it outside. I have like a big cement area in my back area where I would do it. Yeah, I would do it outside. I would not inside my house. I don't want my house to smell like smoke. I worked too hard on this house to make it smell bad. But what I was thinking of, it just reminded me of something like, it sounds really stupid, but I just thought of it and I think it's funny. I guess when I do my art, I kind of feel like I'm God of this little universe. And like, I'm like trying to do different things and then it doesn't work out. And part of it's just letting nature happen. Part of it, I don't know, maybe that's just stupid. But like, that's just what it reminded me of. Like when I'm trying to let go of control, I'm trying to let go of the idea that I can control it, I guess is what I'm saying. And that things are going to happen. It's the whole, that's what I was going to say earlier. The whole idea of letting go is so important. And that's, like I mentioned before, I have a lot of obsessiveness and anxiety and stuff. And part of it comes from, I ruminate and I think about the same things and I get stuck on an idea. And I don't know if you can see it here, I'll hold it up in a minute, but these are all kind of doing a circle, kind of like they're coming from the edges, and I'll hold it up here so you can see it, maybe too. Okay, so there's kind of like these circles like this, and it kind of comes into the middle. This yellow one is another circle, like windy thing, and it comes into the middle in circles. This orange one kind of comes from the edge, and it kind of comes in circles. Just making sure I didn't get paint on my face. Yeah. And so this whole idea is like, it starts from the end and then ends up circling. And I feel like that's like what my mind does. My mind just like circles and it just continually makes like a spiral circle. And it just keeps going. And I just get stuck on these ideas. So like I just did like a spiral there. And I'll do more orange with it. Yeah, so that's, if I do it with my fingers, I can actually do this pretty good.
When you said that had to do with letting go, what were you thinking as far as that goes?
Just about what we were talking about, just choices of those I love and just letting go of the idea of feeling stuck in many, many ways, in many aspects of my life. Like I still feel fairly, and I guess I can say this on here, nobody watches, so I guess it's fine. I still feel fairly stuck religiously. I still go to LDS church sometimes, but when I go, there's so much I don't agree with that I feel like it's just false culturally, and I don't feel like they're true teachings of Jesus, that it's really hard for me to go. I guess for me, I'm okay, but then I don't know what to do with my family, I guess is the more of the thing. And I guess that's where I'm feeling very stuck lately, is I don't know where I should go or what I should do with my kids. Like, I don't know if we should we keep attending this, the congregation nearby us? Should we try to find somewhere else? I've tried to teach them on my own. They call it at home church. We do that a lot. And but it's hard when I'm also questioning so much. But then maybe that's a good thing to talk about, is to be questioning together. Maybe if I've actually thought about, some of them will ask about what we talked about on these things, and I've actually thought about, probably my oldest could probably even just sit in the background and just draw or something while we talk, and he might have some interesting thoughts. It might be, yeah. I guess that's where I'm stuck right now. I feel very stuck religiously, and I don't know the more I learn and the more history I learn, the more I'm like, I don't know what to believe, I guess, is where I feel stuck. I don't know if you've ever come across that in your studies and things. Like my husband and I, we talk about this a lot, even with like world history, not religious history. You know, history is written by the winners, right? And so, and I think that's true. And so like it's so hard to know. Like if I look at the history in the last couple 100 years, or even things that happened in the last 20, I've never been a conspiracy theorist person. However, my husband and I are saying, sometimes I hear things and I'm like, that's plausible. You know, like I'm not trying to look for a conspiracy everywhere, but then I learn different stuff or learn different histories and I'm like, huh. And then I think back and I'm like, that is something I always wondered about that kind of felt a little bit off to me. Or that is something, I don't know, do you get kind of what I'm saying? Like I don't know. So I feel stuck there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, wow. So you open a can of worms for me there, as this is
I know,
this is
right?
a yeah, this is a fun direction to go. Fun and kind of exposing perhaps, but that's okay. I'm all right with that. So, but it's interesting. Just trying to find a place to start with all of that. First of all, I do get you very much. I am in a very strange place, which I don't understand. I tried to go back to the LDS church recently. I thought it would be a good place for certain people that I love to go, and it didn't turn out to be a good experience. But it wasn't horrible either. It it's just certain, like you say, it's mostly cultural. But it's strange. It's like I finally embraced. It's about a year ago. I embraced, just maybe a little more than a year ago. I embraced the fact that I do not feel comfortable within the framework of a religion. Now that does not mean that I don't count myself as one of them. That I don't consider that I still am of that tribe to some extent. It's like I think I wrote a poem once about that it's like about being, it's like just because I can't embrace everything that you embrace doesn't mean that I don't rejoice with you in the things that I do love and embrace. It sounded a lot more poetic in the poem. But so that's the first thing. And here's the strange part. It's had me in a quandary, because oftentimes the people I feel most close to, I don't know if I'd say close to, but the people that I can talk to, some of them have religious inclinations. Many of them do not. And many of them do have religious inclinations, but they're salty, is the best way I can put it. They're people with very kind of like unsavory lives in some ways, but they're really genuine. Like I feel comfortable because I feel like they're completely being themselves with me, and they're kind of a fascinating creature. So, but it's like they're not the sort of people I'd want to live with, or the sort of people that I'd want to like spend a bunch of social time with. It's like but they've become to be part of my life. So that's one aspect. But the other aspect, I think this gets down to a core principle, which is mistaken. I wrote a poem about it recently. If it hasn't come out on the podcast, it will sometime. It's not already come out, but it's about, well, there were two poems. One was called The Completeness Doctrine, and then the other one was called Infallible. It was the first episode of the podcast, Infallible. And it's the principle, from what I can tell, it is the principle. Heresy is the word that comes to mind, but it's the principal false idea that I think destroys many people's faith. And it's this idea of something being completely right. Okay. So it's like, say I'm raised a good Mormon, and all my growing up, I'm raised, and it's like there's these true pillars, these pillars of truth within my framework of my religion, and they're helpful, right? They're ones that point me towards God. But then there's these other ones, and one of those pillars is the pillar of infallibility. And for those of us who are raised LDS, it's the idea, it's like the prophet will never lead you astray. For Catholics, it's the Pope is infallible. What he says about doctrine is infallible. I'm probably making a lot of, there's, half of the 6 people who watch this may tune out after this. But the one for I think for Christians, for particularly Protestant Christians, they have this idea of sola scriptura. So it's like only the scriptures. And so for them, it's the Bible. It's like all truth has to be, found in the Bible, and there can be no truth outside the Bible. What I've discovered in many instances is it's pretty good to look to that book. It's just that in so many instances, what I found is that it's not actually the book, it's their views on the book, the way that they've interpreted it, or the way that their pastors interpreted it, or whatever. But this idea, so imagine now you've got somebody who's raised within a faith, and within that faith, there are certain views which are helpful and certain views which are not helpful. There are certain things that they're getting just right. Well, rarely do we get things just right, but they're getting them more right. And there's some things that they're off on, right? But one of the doctrines is we are right. This is another poem I wrote. We're right because it's us. It's like we must be right because we're the Mormons. We must be right because we're the Catholics. We must be right because we're the sola scriptura, Protestants. And so then, so taking, for example, so what you've done basically all growing up is you've bought into this idea that everything that you're being taught is true. Okay. And then there comes this point in your life where you discover that one thing appears not to be true. And at first, what people usually do is they fight like hell. They just like, no, that can't be right. But then eventually they discover that it's not true. And then guess what happens? They discover another thing, and then another thing. And when enough of those things mount up, what it does is it destroys that false pillar of infallibility. Right? So that it's like, okay, so now, and so basically their religion either had to be all right or all wrong. So now they begin to question everything. And a far better idea, and it's like, this is why I think that many of the people who are seeking God, many of them are on the outside right now, because it's like we live in the age of the internet. It's like, you can't be a member of a certain framework, and people are isolated to your framework anymore. It's like all they have to do is type in a few search words, and they discover, new things that they weren't expecting to find. They discover this, they discover that. So it's like those who are seeking for truth now, strangely, those who want it more than anything, those who want to repent of their false beliefs are finding themselves having a hard time being on the inside, because on the inside, you're not allowed to find faults. You're not allowed to question, right? It's like, because on the inside, it's still an infallibility doctrine. Now what would be great, what I think would be great, is if some of these frameworks were to start embracing, I would love it if the Pope were to come out and say, you know what, we've said that the Pope is infallible like forever, but I'm not infallible. It's like, you guys are gonna have to pray about all this stuff. but I think they struggle to do that because part of it's that they have a degree of power, but I don't believe that all of them are these horrible, wicked people that just want power. Sometimes they feel a responsibility, like, well, if I say that, then, it's like that could, they know that it will fracture many people's faith when the minute that they say that. And so they say, well, I better keep doing things the way that they are. But what's going to happen, I think, is they're going to discover that it's going to fracture if they don't. It's like, yeah. So any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of it. So I guess, yeah, that's something I came to a conclusion of, something similar in 2018. It reminded me of the thought I had then. The problem isn't so much that, well, if there was an admission to being fallible, then it wouldn't be such a big deal, I guess, is more of what it is. If someone in like a leadership position was going to come out and be like, yeah, we taught this and we were wrong, or we don't really know, or like if there was this whole idea of that, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, we can all be in like the not really know together, and it's okay for me to think differently. But if it's just like, no, this is the way it is and this is always the way it is, and no, you can't question this, and how dare you bring in your other ideas, and so I don't think there can be learning if there's not like true discussion with differences of belief, right? So I'm like you. I would say I'm kind of more, I have a hard time with pretty much any organized religion, but that's where it makes it hard for me with my children, is then I don't know what to do there. And that's where I feel like I'm okay. But then what do I do with my children? Because I feel like, I don't know. So I feel like the organization is good for kids. It's kind of like I think you need to have, in art, they always call it, you have to know the rules before you break them, kind of a thing. Like, you have to have some kind of basis. And what we're trying to do is we just try to talk about a lot of things and be like, it's okay not to believe everything you learn and to have different beliefs. And be like, other people might not like that you have different beliefs, but it doesn't mean you can't have different beliefs, because you still can. I don't know. That's just what I've been questioning a lot throughout this week, actually for a long time, but just, what direction to go, what direction to lead my family, and, are some of them too young to understand, because my kids are pretty young. I don't know. So that's where I feel, yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's pretty much it. I just feel stuck.
Well, and I've learned with kids, it's hard with kids, because with kids, they need blacks and whites.
Yeah.
They really need it to be like, stranger danger, like don't speak to strangers. They kind of can't get quite the concept yet of like, some strangers are good, some strangers are bad. It's like, well, how do I know? You know what I mean? It's like they're not mature enough to really understand those things. What I wonder is if wow, to be honest, I actually, I don't know if I have a really good answer, because it's something I've questioned myself. But I think one thing that does encourage me is I think that children learn a lot more from the way the parents are than what they say. It's like they're learning so much by the things you do day in and day out. It's like, and that's what I think leaves the biggest impression. And no matter what road they end up going down, in their future lives, it's like the way that they go down those roads, the way that they are with the people, with the tribe that they choose to associate with, is, I think, far more important. Because I think we've had the idea that our religion was the thing. It was the thing for which we were seeking. But the truth is that the religion was just pointing to something. And what we've done is we've worshiped the signpost. It's like what it's, and the truth is it's like sometimes within certain frameworks, you'll find more truth than within other frameworks. That's true. Sometimes you discover that the things that you thought they were wrong about, they were right about, but all that's found out through that discussion you were talking about. It's like, through bringing up the, the differing views and saying, well, I don't get this part of, the history. Why did this happen? And maybe somebody has a good idea about it, or you pray about it, right? So like, God, what do you think? I've gotten a lot of answers that way. It's like from my history, it's like I went through a period of studying the history a lot, and I don't really anymore, but it brought me a lot of answers. What it really did is it brought me a lot of questions. And so I took those questions to God. And okay, so maybe I'll wrap my comment up with this, and that is that I wonder if all of this is to bring us to God. It's like, because I think what we're being taught right now is that there is no framework, there is no parent, there is no mentor, no guru who can give us the answers, that the answers are going to have to come from God. So now we are brought to the correct position, the place that we should have been all along, not looking to those things, but to God himself. Not to say that we may not feel impressed to be within a framework. And I'll say this last thing. Sorry, one more thing. I don't know what to do with it. I feel like in a way I'm not in the right position by not being a part of the framework. There's certain things that I can't participate in because I'm not part of the framework. I don't feel like it's perfectly the way that it should be. I wish it was. So maybe God will bring it back together in the end, but maybe for this period of time, he wants us to be seeking him on our own in our closets.
Yeah, and well, the other interesting thing with that also gets confusing, because I hear you hear that a lot, the whole idea of you pray and you feel for your answer and things, but sometimes those answers or those feelings change. So like things, so it's like there's this absolute truth and something that I thought was absolutely truth, and then I get older and I learn like, oh, it's not, like you said, kind of like the whole infallibility, fallibility thing. And then I learned, oh, it's not an absolute truth. And so something I started saying is, but it's not like that truth is bad. It was like I needed that idea to come to the next idea. Like it was part of, again, the process. And so sometimes I've just been like, this is my truth. Like, for example, different truths. So for example, like I sometimes with my addiction recovery friends, we call them like personal commandments. Like one of my personal commandments is I can't have my cell phone in my bedroom because I will stay up all night looking at it. I can't do it. I don't have the, it'll distract me and wake me not sleep. I'll just get sucked into something. I just can't do it. So I think, I don't know, I think there's something to that. Like you go a direction and you try it out, and yeah, I don't know. It's definitely something that causes me a lot of anxiety. Again, since I've started talking to you guys, it makes me feel a lot better religiously, just being like, oh, I have someone and I can talk about the ideas that I have in my head that not everybody agrees with, and I love that. So it gives me like a place to have like a sounding board. But I feel like with my children, they don't have enough background to do that. Like I feel like studying scriptures is really important. I feel like kind of having I guess reading something and having a foundation, or like being like, what do you think about this, and having a discussion about it. I guess it's kind of like that. I guess think of it like school with learning. There's things I learned in school growing up I thought were totally true, and they're not. Same thing, and it's just like this whole idea of learning. Or one quote, I'm going to slaughter it, but one of the quote or ideas that I really like is the idea in science is like the only thing where they can be like, this is what it is, this is science, and then it changes the next year from a discovery and everyone's like, oh yeah, it's still science, and it's like totally fine. But then like religion, if that happens, then everyone's like, that's it, it's all wrong. And so it's like this whole idea, or if science is this continual seeking for truth and finding things that make sense a lot. And I think that's kind of the same thing for like personal religion. It's like I'm trying to find the right thing that makes sense. Is there atoms? What's inside of an atom? What's inside of this? And this, as you go on, you learn more and more. I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking, but we probably need to stop. We're getting, okay, yeah, we've just been over an hour. But I'd like to talk about that more actually with Greg. I'm interested to hear. I'm interested to hear what Dee thinks. One of the reasons I really like talking with both you and Greg is because you do have these different ideas. And when I first saw Greg's stuff, I was like, oh, that's really Mormon. I don't know. And then I was like, oh, okay, it's not, there's definitely that background, but there's not, he does things that are different than a standard Mormon. And so then it was like, oh, that's okay, kind of a thing, right? Because I don't know, there's just, there's that thought. So anyway, so that's what this painting is about, I guess. It doesn't really look like anything. It's a mess of circles and spirals. And I guess that's me trying to figure out what direction to go. And I don't know, I guess is what you could say. And one thing stands out and I hold on to that. And then I hold on to something else. And I'm not sure where to go. I guess that's kind of where this one's going, is this whole idea of, I don't know. I think it just needs a good cleansing fire. Right? Of where to go. It's kind of all I have for today. I should write down some of these thoughts too on the back of this.
Yeah, maybe just write something down so that we can remember where to pick up with Greg.
Yeah.
But
so let's see, today is the 19th. So 2/19. So some of the ideas that we talked about were
not knowing.
What? Sorry, go ahead.
Not knowing.
Not knowing. Not knowing like what is true, or just not
I don't
knowing
know.
direction, truth. I'll put question marks.
We talked about the infallibility thing.
Fallibility versus infallible. We talked about organized religion. Talked about learning through open discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, I did think of something throughout today that I was going to say that I forgot. Back when you were talking about Gandhi and stuff, I believe this goes with some of the teachings of, it make me sound like an idiot, but Gandhi was Buddhist, right?
It was Hindu.
Hindu. Oh, totally different. Dang, got that wrong. Anyways, there's a Buddhist thing. I love Buddhism, and I love a lot of stuff that are taught in that framework. But one of the ideas is that suffering is wanting things to be other than what they are. And so when you have that suffering, you have that peace when you just accept life. In addiction recovery, they would say accept life on life's terms. So it's the same thing. Like it's wanting things other than what they are, and just being like, this is what it is. It is what it is. What am I gonna do? And just this idea of just like acceptance and letting go of outcomes and life and things. I think that's kind of, yeah. I guess that's kind of what I was just thinking. So I like that idea. I got a lot of stuff on my hands, so I've got to try to clear it off.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, I guess that's it then. Do we?
Yeah, I think we're. I do have a question. That one of the things I've been working on, this is kind of just business stuff. So Greg, you can cut it off at this point.